I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow.
The decision had already been written. Prince William had approved the removal. The supporting papers had been prepared, and Tom Parker Bowles was only hours away from losing his place on the Royal Estate Trustee List. Then King Charles entered the room, read the final page, and stopped everything. With one command, the monarch overturned his son's authority and exposed a family division far more dangerous than anyone inside the palace was prepared to admit. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William stood beside the long table and watched his father return the papers unsigned. The Royal Estate Trustee List, a private group overseeing valuable properties, historic residences, family holdings, and long-term estate decisions connected to the crown, was not ceremonial. It carried influence over assets the future king believed must be protected from personal loyalty and family pressure. He had spent months entering that system without his knowledge, because every decision made today could shape the authority he would inherit tomorrow. Charles placed the file before him. The king did not ask for time. He did not suggest a review. He ordered officials to stop the removal and keep Camilla's son in place. William's face remained controlled, yet his jaw tightened as the meaning became clear. His father had not merely questioned his judgment. The monarch had blocked it before the instruction could take effect. Camilla received the news in a private sitting room and felt relief before fear followed. The queen consort knew Tom had been spared, but she understood the price. Charles had protected her son by openly challenging his heir, and that protection could deepen every suspicion William carried about her family's access to royal power. She asked whether the matter was finished. The answer was more troubling than she expected. Charles had instructed the royal secretary, the senior official responsible for managing the monarch's formal papers and decisions, to mark Tom's position as protected until further notice. That meant William could not submit another order the following morning. The king had closed the path before his son could try again. Then William noticed the sealed memorandum attached to the trustee file. It carried Charles's personal cipher, the official mark identifying a document issued under the sovereign's authority. The date on it came before the confrontation. Someone had warned the king in advance. William lowered his voice and asked one question: who told him? But before he could uncover who had carried his decision to Charles, he had to face the more painful truth. Why had Camilla's son been placed so close to royal power in the first place? Behind the trustee dispute stood four people bound together by marriage, blood, loyalty, and suspicion. Charles saw a son he had promised to protect. William saw a private citizen occupying a position that could shape the monarchy's future. Camilla saw an attack on her family, and Tom Parker Bowles found himself trapped inside a struggle he could neither control nor escape, knowing that every defense of his position would deepen the resentment surrounding it. Charles had never treated Tom as a constitutional figure. Their connection was personal, built through years of family dinners, private holidays, and the king's determination to make Camilla's children feel accepted inside a household that had not always welcomed them easily. The trustee appointment, a formal position giving someone access to discussions about royal properties, finances, and long-term estate planning, had become part of that promise. To the monarch, it represented inclusion. To William, it represented a dangerous collapse of boundaries. William sat alone in his office and reopened the appointment file. The prince stopped at the signature authorizing Tom's place and felt the anger return, sharper than before. This was not simply about one name on one list. Decisions involving estates he would one day inherit had been made without him, while someone outside the direct royal line had been given access to information he believed should remain tightly controlled. The future king did not see cruelty in his own position. He saw duty. Camilla spoke to Tom in private and told him that Charles had blocked the removal. The queen consort expected relief, perhaps even gratitude, but her son did not smile. He lowered his eyes and asked whether staying had become more damaging than leaving. She tried to reassure him, yet he pressed the question again. Tom had begun to fear that his name was no longer protecting the family. It was dividing it. Tom had attended 3 confidential estate briefings, meetings normally limited to senior trustees and direct royal representatives. Those sessions included discussions about private residences, future ownership, and financial oversight. William believed that access should never have reached beyond the core royal structure. Tom, however, privately admitted that he had never requested the role and had once considered refusing it altogether. He feared his appointment had been used to strengthen Camilla's influence without anyone asking what that burden would cost him. Charles sat alone after dinner, holding a photograph of Camilla with her children. The king's determination came from more than authority. It came from guilt. Failing Tom would feel like failing his wife, and he could not bear that thought. But William's anger had not begun with the removal papers. It had begun months earlier, during one estate ceremony when Tom crossed a line the prince would never forget. That single moment turned an uncomfortable compromise into what William now saw as a direct threat. The conflict could be traced to one cold morning at Sandringham, when a routine estate ceremony turned into a moment of silent humiliation. William had arrived expecting to approve a long-term preservation plan beside his father. Instead, he discovered Tom Parker Bowles already seated at the trustee table, holding a confidential estate ledger and speaking with the authority of someone whose place had been settled long before the heir had been consulted. William had expected the meeting to mark a new stage in his responsibility. The Sandringham Preservation Ceremony was an annual gathering where trustees reviewed property protections, agricultural leases, inheritance limits, and the future care of royal land. For the prince, it was not another formal duty. These were estates he would one day oversee, and every decision carried the weight of his future reign. Tom opened the private ledger and questioned one of William's recommendations. The document contained restricted details about estate use, financial planning, and long-term ownership. He argued that a guest residence marked for preservation should remain available for Camilla's family. His words were calm, but their meaning struck hard. The Queen's son was not simply attending the meeting. He was influencing how royal property might serve his own family. William slowly removed his hand from the ledger and looked toward Charles. The future king waited for his father to correct Tom, or at least remind him where the boundary stood. Charles remained silent. The king's refusal to intervene left his son publicly undermined before every trustee at the table, and that silence cut deeper than the proposal itself. Tom recognized the tension too late. He closed the ledger and tried to soften his position, saying the residence could remain under royal control while still being available for family occasions. William answered with controlled formality. He thanked him for his opinion, then reminded the room that future estate decisions required clear constitutional purpose. The words sounded polite. The warning beneath them did not. William's unease deepened when he discovered Tom's proposal had already been written into the meeting notes before the ceremony began. Someone had given him access to the agenda and encouraged him to raise the issue. This had not been an impulsive suggestion. It had been prepared. Camilla's role emerged later through a private documented account from a household aide. The Queen Consort had asked Charles to ensure her children kept a lasting connection to selected royal residences. She feared they would be pushed aside after his reign ended. The king had listened, and Tom had become the instrument of that promise. William left Sandringham and instructed a senior aide to review every appointment connected to estate control. That quiet order became the first step toward Tom's removal. Months later, when he placed the final papers before Charles, the silence from Sandringham was replaced by words neither man could take back. No advisors were allowed inside. No secretaries were permitted to take notes. Charles closed the library door and faced William alone, with Tom's removal papers lying between them. What began as a dispute over governance quickly became something far more personal. The king accused his heir of punishing Camilla through her son. William answered that his father was allowing love, guilt, and loyalty to weaken the boundaries of the crown. Charles stood behind the desk and refused to soften his position. The private library had become the only place where ceremony no longer protected either man, because no official language could hide what was really happening. Tom's place on the trustee list created a conflict between family access and public duty. William believed that leaving that conflict untouched would damage trust in the monarchy, especially when the estates involved would one day pass under his responsibility. Charles placed both hands on the removal order and told his son that Tom Parker Bowles would not be discarded merely because his connection to Camilla had become politically inconvenient. The monarch's voice remained controlled, but the accusation landed with force. He believed the prince was using procedure to punish the queen consort through someone she loved. William answered without raising his voice. The future king said the issue was not Tom's birth, his name, or his relationship to the queen. It was authority. A royal estate trustee was someone allowed to influence decisions about property, finances, inheritance, and long-term control. Tom had been given power over assets he would never be constitutionally responsible for protecting, and William refused to pretend that distinction did not matter. Charles pushed the papers back across the desk. The king expected his son to take them. William did not move. The untouched pages remained between them, carrying more weight than any spoken threat. One man was defending a promise. The other was defending a future reign. Neither was willing to surrender. Charles finally revealed the truth through their private conversation. He had personally approved Tom's appointment and had given Camilla his word that her son would not be removed while he remained king. The admission changed the argument. This was no longer about policy alone. It was about a vow the monarch had made to his wife. William responded with a discovery of his own. The prince had learned that Tom's access had recently been expanded to include future use discussions involving properties expected to pass under William's control. That meant decisions about his inheritance were already being shaped before he had been fully consulted. Charles declared the appointment protected by royal authority. William turned toward the door and left without bowing. The battle had moved beyond family loyalty, because hidden beneath the king's command was a question the palace could no longer avoid. Who truly controlled the royal estates? William had assumed a signed order would be enough. It was not. Tom's place on the trustee list was protected by a chain of permissions, private assurances, and carefully drafted clauses that reached directly back to Charles. Every attempt to remove him triggered another barrier, and at the center of that machinery stood the king, quietly using ancient authority to defend a modern family promise no advisor had dared challenge. The royal secretary entered William's office carrying the estate charter, the formal document that set out who could be appointed, protected, or removed from the trustee structure. His hands remained steady, but he avoided the prince's eyes. The system did not operate through one signature alone. It depended on royal appointment, written estate rules, and personal designation by the sovereign, which meant Tom Parker Bowles could not simply be erased from the list. William opened the charter and found the clause almost immediately. Charles had revised the appointment framework after becoming king, giving the monarch power to preserve selected trustees even when other senior royals objected. The future king read the date twice. The amendment had been created before his removal order, and that timing felt like betrayal. His father had not merely resisted reform, he had prepared for it. Charles reviewed the same document alone and felt the certainty begin to weaken. The king removed his glasses and pressed his fingers against his eyes. Protecting Tom had once seemed like an act of loyalty to Camilla, but the cost was becoming impossible to ignore. The monarch was defending one bond while pushing William further away, and he knew the distance between them was no longer symbolic. Camilla had known the protective clause existed. The queen consort understood that Charles wanted safeguards around her son's position, but she had not known he activated them before William submitted the removal papers. That discovery unsettled her. The king had acted in anticipation of conflict, which meant he expected his heir to resist long before the confrontation began. One trustee had already warned Charles during a private recorded consultation that keeping Tom in place could provoke resignations. The monarch listened, then ordered the concern excluded from the formal minutes, the official written record of the meeting. He believed silence would contain the danger. Instead, it buried the warning where it could grow. William circled the clause protecting Tom, closed the charter, and faced the secretary. The prince said he would not challenge his father publicly. Then he made his own position clear. He would refuse to approve any future estate decision in which Tom participated. The trustee body could remain intact on paper, but in practice, it was about to stop functioning. Charles had saved Tom's title, but the victory lasted only until the estate machinery stopped moving, and everyone began paying the price. Tom Parker Bowles remained a trustee, but the position changed overnight. Meetings were postponed. Briefing folders stopped arriving. Invitations were quietly withdrawn. Charles had preserved his name on the list, yet William had found another way to strip the role of meaning. Inside the palace, the silence became unmistakable. Tom was technically protected, but in every room that mattered, he could feel himself being pushed further outside. William refused to attend any trustee meeting where Tom exercised expanded authority. A trustee meeting was the formal session where decisions about royal land, leases, preservation funds, and private residences were approved. The prince's refusal left officials with a brutal choice: proceed without the heir or delay everything. They chose delay, and the estate machinery began to freeze. Tom arrived for one scheduled session expecting tension. Instead, he found his place card gone. An aide told him the meeting had been reduced to direct principals only, meaning only the senior royal decision-makers would remain. He said nothing. He folded the unused agenda, placed it inside his coat, and walked away with the quiet humiliation of a man who still held a title, but no longer held a place. Camilla learned what had happened and confronted Charles before the day was over. The queen consort demanded to know why his protection had left her son more exposed than before. She had believed the king's intervention would secure Tom. Instead, it had made him the visible target of a struggle between monarch and heir. Charles answered with a truth he did not want to admit. The king could preserve the appointment, but he could not force William to cooperate. He had won the formal battle and lost control of everything around it. Camilla heard the limits in his voice, and for the first time, she understood that his defense had protected Tom's name while sacrificing his dignity. The damage spread. 2 trustees prepared resignation letters after private consultations, fearing they were being used as pieces in a family conflict that could destabilize the entire estate system. Their concern was simple. If every decision became a test of loyalty between Charles and William, no one could govern with confidence. Tom sat alone that evening and wrote a letter offering to step aside. He explained that he had never wanted his appointment to divide the family or weaken the crown. Yet he did not send it. He left the envelope beside a photograph of Camilla, torn between ending the crisis and making Charles's sacrifice appear meaningless. Then Tom made one final decision. He asked William for a private meeting without Charles, without Camilla, and without a single palace advisor present. For the first time, the 2 men would speak without their parents between them, and what Tom admitted would change William's understanding of the entire conflict. Tom entered the room expecting accusation. William expected resistance. Instead, the meeting began with an admission. Camilla's son placed his unsent resignation letter on the table and told the prince he had never asked to control royal property, never wanted to stand between father and son, and no longer believed remaining on the trustee list was worth the damage it had caused. The confession disarmed William more completely than any argument could have done. Tom had chosen a small private residence, far from the main palace offices. No advisors waited outside. No secretary recorded their words. This was the first time the 2 men had spoken directly about the appointment, without Charles, Camilla, formal papers, or palace officials shaping the conversation. The trustee role, a governing position with influence over estate property, inheritance planning, and long-term decisions, had become too important to discuss through other people. Tom pushed the letter across the table. William read the opening lines, then stopped. The prince placed the page down and asked why it had never been sent. Camilla's son answered honestly. He feared resigning would humiliate his mother and make it appear that William had successfully forced her family out of royal life. He did not want the queen consort to feel rejected because of him. William listened without interruption. The future king then admitted that his anger toward Charles had hardened into suspicion of Tom. His father's secrecy had made every action appear calculated, even when the man before him had not created the system protecting him. The prince had been fighting for institutional boundaries, but somewhere along the way, duty had begun to feel personal. Tom then revealed the truth through their private conversation. Charles had encouraged him to speak during the Sandringham ceremony, because the king wanted Camilla's family to feel permanently included. The proposal that had enraged William had not begun with Tom. It had been arranged by his father. William finally understood the deeper conflict. This had never truly been a battle between himself and Camilla's son. It was a struggle between his responsibility for the monarchy's future and Charles's determination to correct the emotional exclusions of the past. One man feared blurred boundaries. The other feared abandoning the people he loved. William did not accept the resignation immediately. Instead, the prince offered a compromise. Tom would leave the governing trustee role, but retain a ceremonial advisory connection, meaning he could attend selected family discussions without authority over property, inheritance, finances, or estate decisions. Tom agreed. But both men knew the compromise would mean nothing unless Charles released the promise he had made to Camilla. The final decision now rested with the man who had stopped the removal, and the king would have to choose between preserving his authority and repairing the family beneath it. By morning, the private dispute was no longer private. A newspaper appeared with a single image dominating its front page. Charles leaving the palace alone beneath the headline, "King Blocks Heir to Save Camilla's Son." Broadcasters gathered outside Buckingham Palace. Crowds pressed against the barriers, and the monarchy's internal struggle became a national argument over loyalty, privilege, inheritance, and the limits of a sovereign's power within his own family. The story had escaped through details no palace statement could easily deny. The blocked removal order, the cancelled meetings, and the growing paralysis inside the trustee system had reached the press together. A trustee structure was the body responsible for decisions involving royal land, private residences, financial oversight, and long-term estate control. Now that machinery had become the center of a public crisis, forcing the household to answer questions it had hoped to keep behind closed doors. The front page sharpened the division. Charles appeared alone beneath the headline, while a second photograph showed William entering an estate meeting without Tom Parker Bowles. Some readers saw the king as a loyal husband defending Camilla's family from rejection. Others saw the prince as the only figure willing to protect royal property from private influence. The monarchy was no longer explaining one decision. It was defending two opposing ideas of duty. Outside Buckingham Palace, the argument became impossible to ignore. A small crowd began chanting support for William, praising him for drawing a clear boundary around the estates. Across the barrier, another group held signs applauding Charles for refusing to abandon Camilla's son. Police quietly widened the space between them as the tension grew. Camilla watched the live coverage from a private room. The queen consort remained still until one presenter described Tom as the symbol of a royal access crisis. She switched off the television and sat in silence. Charles saw the pain in her face, and the king felt his certainty weaken. Yet reversing himself now would appear to prove that William had forced the monarch's hand. The palace prepared two statements. One defended Tom's appointment and insisted the king's authority remained untouched. The other announced a revised trustee structure that would reduce his role. Charles read both, knowing only one could become the official truth. William refused every request to brief against his father. The future king would not damage the crown simply to win the argument. That restraint struck Charles more deeply than the headlines. The king summoned William, Camilla, and Tom for one final meeting. Behind closed doors, the dispute would end not through victory, but through a sacrifice each of them would be forced to accept. The final meeting began with no speeches and no display of royal authority. Charles entered, carrying the same file he had once used to block William's order. Camilla sat beside Tom, while the prince remained across the table. This time, the king did not push the removal papers away. He opened the folder, acknowledged the damage his intervention had caused, and accepted that protecting one relationship could no longer come at the expense of the monarchy's future. Charles looked at each person before speaking. For the first time since the crisis began, all four central figures were making the decision together rather than through secret clauses, private promises, or conflicting instructions. The Royal Estate Trustee List was the official body controlling decisions about royal property, finances, inheritance planning, and long-term estate use. A place on it carried real authority, which was why the argument had threatened both the family and the crown. Charles admitted that his original intervention came from fear. The king had wanted to protect Camilla and prevent her children from feeling permanently excluded from royal life. He believed saving Tom's position would prove that her family truly belonged. Instead, the monarch had allowed a personal promise to enter a system that demanded clear boundaries. William answered with equal honesty. The prince said his removal order had been institutionally justified but emotionally severe. He had focused so heavily on the secrecy surrounding Tom's appointment that he failed to separate the man from the system protecting him. The future king had defended duty, but he now understood that duty without compassion could become its own form of punishment. Tom turned toward Camilla and spoke quietly. He told his mother that remaining in a role dividing the family would not be loyalty to her. It would only deepen the damage. He asked the queen consort to let him step away without treating the decision as a rejection of her place beside Charles. Charles signed the revised order. Tom Parker Bowles was removed from the governing trustee role immediately, while a ceremonial advisory position was created with no authority over property, finances, inheritance, or confidential votes. The king set down the pen and slid the document toward William. William did not celebrate. He placed his hand over the folder and thanked his father for choosing clarity. Camilla felt the loss, but she understood the meaning. Her son had not been expelled from the family. A boundary had simply been restored between affection and power. William agreed to preserve the revised charter, but added one permanent rule. No extended family member could hold estate authority without written approval from both the sovereign and the direct heir. Charles left beside Camilla. William remained with Tom, and the two men parted without bitterness. The name disappeared from the trustee list, but the monarchy emerged stronger, because the king finally accepted that love could guide the family, but duty had to govern the crown. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.